Hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. I just want to give a little energy update. I just did a light language video. And in that message, today's pajama day. I'm just going to stay in my pajamas all day. So I'm catching up on some video sessions. So you guys, if I'm running a little behind, so apologies on that. If you guys have emailed me about an email session, I'm catching up on those this weekend. So you should be receiving those by tonight or tomorrow. And also catching up on a lot of things that I was working on this week. So let's talk a little bit about this week. There's so much. Anytime I pop on here, I just try to go with what I'm guided to talk about, because whenever I try to push for a certain topic or a subject, it seems that I'm guided to go in whatever direction, of course, you know, my higher guidance team, aka my higher aspect, wants to talk about. And so sometimes it's just about allowing ourselves to stay in that flow. And this week we'll start off, it's such a powerful week. We've got solar flare activity, massive solar flare activity, I think for the last 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't know we had solar flare activity, but for those of you that are sensitive, you can feel it when this stuff starts to erupt, so to speak. And then some friends of mine were sharing that we had these solar flares, and that made a lot of sense as to why I was feeling what I was feeling. How does that feel for some people? It can heighten our physical sensitivity. It can heighten our extrasensory sensitivity. It can make us feel very high, vertigo. It can make us feel off balance. It can make us want to sleep a lot more or go. For myself, I was highly energized until today and yesterday. It was like the whole week I was just taking it in, and then today it just was like shut down. And so I had all these activities planned, and I thought I just need to take it easy and sit and do some nesting and catch up with obviously some sessions and things like that. It gives us an ability. It's almost like it gives us, from my perspective, a push. It'll help us, and it's not just the solar activity. We are in union with Mother Earth. Anything that's going on Mother Earth is intricately connected with us, and I talked about this in a previous video. Anything that's going on with us is intricately connected with Mother Earth and all of the planets. So that's why astrology has such an impact on so many people. It can be very useful. I have some dear friends, Megan and Kate and Carrie Ann, that use the gene keys, and they share a lot about the gene keys, and I find that's very interesting and fascinating. The dreams this week have been very strange. It's funny, I was seeing this dream weave with my friends, Liz and Megan and Saskia and Kate and Candace. And we were just kind of flowing back and forth, and we're going through a lot of the same things. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And so for example, I was having all of these dreams that I didn't quite understand, and my friends gave me a perspective on maybe what those dreams were about, and vice versa. And then we recognize, I've talked about this before, that we're all seeing similar things. Or I will be driving my car, seeing things in front of me on the road, and then when I get to my location, or I'm at a stoplight, and I look and see what perhaps my friends have shared with me on Instagram, I just saw them. They're talking about it. This is the divine weaving of our reality as we weave together. We don't necessarily realize how intricately connected we all are, especially with our soul groups, or especially with like-minded, more importantly, like-hearted individuals on this journey together. This is that dream weave, that fabric of weaving together our realities. And when we recognize and acknowledge that's what's going on, it becomes really fun. It becomes less lonely and less isolated, because that did come up this week for many of us. I feel like when we have these we've got all of these alignments going on. We had a meteorite, right? Some kind of meteor activity in New York. There were sightings that were said that they were satellites. Who knows if those were really satellites or not? All of these crazy and exciting and fun things are going on, and it's just heightened activity. And this is a direct reflection of our own heightened activity in our own bodies, in our own technology, in our own skin suits, in our own beautiful creations, connected to everything. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a moment. So I was talking about how things really came up for us, that to show us how intricately connected we are. But there was also this sense, I feel, for many of us, we were reminded at times how lonely and isolated we can feel as beings who are on this journey. And I want to talk briefly about that. I've talked about this a lot. Part of the reason I started this channel was because I recognized that I wasn't the only one going through this. And if I shared my experiences with others, perhaps they would recognize that they weren't going crazy. They weren't necessarily alone and isolated, or perhaps give a little bit more awareness and understanding to what it was they were experiencing. Because as I experienced it, I came to understand more about what it was that I was experiencing. Then in sharing that, others have reached out and said, that's what I was seeing. That's what I've been experiencing. I'm getting goosebumps. That's what I've been going through. That's what my friend was going through. And so it's become this network of sharing that we're all doing in one capacity or another. And so this week there was a heightened sense for some of us, and myself included at one point. At one point the energies were so strong that it was like, how could this person not be feeling that, right? How could my spouse not be feeling this, like, right? And I really had to remind myself that that isn't what they chose to experience. I chose to feel it. I asked in my journey to feel, see, hear, know, and understand with integrity, with expansiveness, with bliss and love. I wanted to have and experience all of it. And I just want to share, be careful what you wish for. Many of us on this journey have asked for that. We've asked for heightened claircognizance, clairaudience, telepathy, the ability to astral project, the ability to lucid dream. We've asked for it. Here it is. And sometimes it isn't showing up for us exactly how we expected, because we think it's a certain thing. We think it's a certain experience, right? And then it shows up and it's like, that isn't what I was asking for. Or, what is this that I'm seeing? I thought it was supposed to look like this. That's not how it looks. I could go in so many different directions with this. I'm going to try to stay somewhat linear here. So in relationships, we've seen a lot this week of what is still not necessarily, it's a reminder, just because you're married to someone doesn't mean you're twins. And I'm not talking about the soul flame and the twin, what do we call it? Anyways, that's not what I'm talking about. We are not all, we are one. We are connected and all of that, but that doesn't mean we're the same person. We each came here to have a unique, individual experience. If we have chosen to find a partner to mirror that to us, to be our twin, that's fantastic. That doesn't mean that's what we all chose to experience, if that makes sense. So for those of you out there still searching for your twin flame, a big reminder this week is you are your own twin flame. And once you feel that ignition as oneness with you, that desire to have someone else reflect that back to you isn't as strong, if that makes sense. And this is all from my own perspective and my own experience. There are others out there that they've got their twin flame and they complete each other, and that is fantastic because that's what they chose to experience here. That doesn't mean that's what I chose to experience here. For myself, I was really shown this week how different my spouse and partner and I am. And I was really reminded, am I going to accept those differences, or am I going to focus on that and create an imbalance within me because I'm not allowing them the space to be who they are and what they chose to come here and express and experience? Am I going to step on their toes by saying, how come you don't see what I see? Or, why don't you understand what I'm going through? It was a very gentle reminder that what I'm experiencing and going through is my own journey. And in that sense, it can feel lonely. It can feel isolated. And we can get our feelings hurt because sometimes this other person, our spouse, our friend, our family, who we thought got us, doesn't really understand to that level what we're going through. And the question is, are we judging them for that, for not understanding that? Or are we allowing them to be in that space and let that go? Because in reality, that then creates a certain judgment about what we're experiencing as being deeper or more spiritual or better or awful, or all of those are fine as long as we acknowledge and recognize that's what's going on. So there were a lot of labels that were attached or attachments that came up as labels for me this week. And it was very easy for me to see it, acknowledge it, and go, all right, I see you, label, I see you, judgment, I see you. And because I'm creating this separation and label around what I'm experiencing, that then created for me a separation from my environment, including my family, friends, spouse, and then allowed me to see that that was what was making me feel more isolated. And once I just integrated those emotions and energies, how do I do that? Acknowledging that I'm feeling those things. How do I do that? I recognize that something feels a certain way. How do I recognize what that feeling is? Sometimes by labeling it. It all works together. And once I can isolate those things, I can go, oh, all right, I feel what's going on. I accept that as a feeling I'm experiencing right now. I accept that as a label or a judgment. And sometimes it just goes away and integrates, melts, and shifts from there. Other times I don't do any of that. I just feel frustration. I feel anxiousness. I feel that, and I go for a walk. I go for, a swim, or I go for an Epsom salt bath, or I light some candles and I go into meditation. I don't have to label it, but sometimes it's helpful. So part of this is about us recognizing what we need in that moment, and that is know thyself. I know when I'm very anxious, I need to create, I need to expel some of that energy. And that can be through dancing, singing, moving. But other times it's about just sitting with it and allowing yourself to feel those emotions that's coming up. So all of these can be tools. There is no wrong or right way to utilize these tools, if that makes sense. So those are all things that I did. And this leads me into a beautiful conversation I had with a healer this week. Several, actually. And all of those things, just like the light language when I speak, sometimes it just morphs into different languages from different regions of the galaxy or places in Mother Earth or beings that I've been, that I am now embodied as. And I really had to let go of that judgment or label. Well, what is it? Well, why am I speaking that language now? Does that mean I'm feeling so on and so forth? There is this great ability we have as human beings to analyze and to be logical and to be technical and to pick things apart. But there comes this balance and harmony where that's not always necessary. And for me, again, it always comes back to trust. Trusting in the process. So when I went through these feelings of separation and isolation this week, they didn't last very long, whereas 3 or 4 years ago, they might have lasted for months. Everybody's at a different stage. Someone may be at that stage where they felt isolated, they're continuing to feel isolated, and again, maybe refer back to what I was just mentioning, asking those questions, what feelings, what judgments, what thoughts am I having about myself or others that is creating this separation? And once we can integrate those and let go of the need to feel different, to feel not as good or better than, and by the way, this isn't necessarily what anybody out there watching this video is feeling. Some people might go, well, that's ego. Sure. We still have an ego. We're a human being. Ego isn't a bad thing. Ego is meant to help us to see and feel what's going on. It's boundaries. So that was another thing that came up this week was boundaries. Creating that, I need some alone time. I need to process what's going on. That can be challenging for many of us. Others, it's the opposite. We've had too much alone time and we're feeling isolated, and it's time to step out of our cocoon and reconnect with even Mother Earth, even with a friend or family member, because I'm kind of jumping all over here, so let me go back to that. I have so many people that come to me who think they're alone because they think that nobody understands them. And the biggest piece of advice, I'll say, it's not even advice, it's just me sharing what I had to go through, was recognizing that that's okay. Even my best friends may not 100% get what I'm going through. Because again, it's my experience. It's my own unique individual perspective, perception, so on and so forth. And if I place an expectation on them to fully understand what it is that I'm seeing, feeling, or hearing, that's an expectation that is placing restraints on them. Oops, I'm getting, sorry about the noise. So recognizing that, that's putting a limitation on them or putting them in a category that later on, what happens is that need for them to understand me fully, sometimes it just dissolves. And I'm like, wow, that is so cool that they got this little piece of it, because I wasn't even seeing that little piece of it. I was so tunnel visioned on them needing to understand, let's say, the physical symptoms that we're going through. And they are getting it. We are all different pieces of the puzzle, is all I'm trying to say. Sometimes we get really tunnel vision on what it is we're experiencing, and we think nobody gets our full piece of the puzzle. But in reality, there's more than maybe what it is than we're even seeing, if that makes sense. All right, so it was like a chain of events. It was like boom, 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 boom this week that lined up for many of us to access, be present with, acknowledge, process. It was this deep compression where this was happening on a multi-dimensional layer. And sometimes we can get stuck in one particular process, is basically what I'm saying. So that is what creates sometimes that immense feeling of feeling like I'm the only one that gets this. Once we process that, more people do show up for us that also get it in their own way. So part of this is about accepting others where they're at. I have beings that I connect with who are galactic, and that's all they want to play with, is what's going on in the galactics, what's going on with Sirius, and the color and the ray spectrum and all of that. Awesome. That's the piece they bring to the puzzle. Others are only talking about what's going on in the political agenda and the green screen reality, I call it. The emerald, right, from Wizard of Oz. But they've got really great perspective on what's going on. Awesome. That's their choice to be experiencing that in that way. Others are really all about the changes on the earth and what's going on with the astrology and the sun and the planetary alignments, and they bring that piece of the puzzle together. Others are talking about the body and the crystalline frequencies and the physics behind it and the alchemy, and that's awesome. So you get where I'm going with this. I could go on and on and on and on and on. And the cool thing about that is we can take pieces of that and go, you know, that I get that, I don't understand that, but that's interesting. You know, I love to play with it all. And that brings me joy, and it helps me feel more expansive. And it's all a gift. Everybody has their own gift or gifts that they tend to tap into more than others. And that's great. That's awesome. That doesn't mean that just because someone else is seeing the galactics, that we all have to get messages from the galactics. Again, I'm being invited to share with everybody, let go of that judgment to be able to channel or to speak light language. That isn't necessarily something that you need to do. We can all do it, but it isn't always what we came here to do or what we are choosing to do in this moment, or it isn't necessarily the tool that is going to give us the best and greatest feeling of expansiveness right now. Sometimes with those particular gifts comes more confusion, just to share from my perspective. Sometimes those gifts come through and we don't know what to do with them. It sends us in a downward spiral because we start to question, is it good, is it bad? So it all comes back to, are we doing the work through our hearts to find our consistency of processing all of these other things that are coming through, so that when a major activation like that happens, we're able to hold it with balance and bliss and expansiveness and not go into a deeper space of bad, right, wrong, judgment, justice, anger, if that makes sense. So that was something that came up for a lot of people this week. It's going to be a long video. Healers feel like a lot of people feel like they took 2 steps backwards and lost. I had a few sessions this week, and just to share, a lot of people are going through that. They feel like they might have lost the Midas touch, so to speak. No, we have had more things come through, and we're processing all of these things, which can make us feel like we've lost our others. The biggest message about that is not to be attached. Do not be attached. This is what my guides tell me. I'm not telling you to not be attached. This is what my guides share with me. Do not be attached to the particular modality that you are comfortable with using. Because what I'm learning is ascension is not about comfort always. It isn't always about settling in and getting comfortable, because that then leads sometimes, for some of us, me, to complacency. I get comfortable, I relax, and this doesn't mean not to get comfortable and relax. This is a different meaning. I'm talking about a different subject. We all know we've gotten comfortable. Let's say we have a job and we get comfortable with our friends, and then we start to not expand. What happens later on is that leads sometimes to boredom, it leads to complacency, and it leads to stagnation. We are so multidimensional as healers and light workers, and this is for those of you out there who might have felt, or energy readers, whatever it might be. There are other things that we're accessing right now that we don't quite feel comfortable with, and it can destabilize our reality. So some of it is about, yes, relax and let it unfold. And I'm really being shown, don't hang on to our other, and this isn't just about healing modalities. This is about not getting comfortable and complacent with everything. Particular things that are going on in the earth, particular things that are going on with political or social or economic. Things are changing at a rapid speed. Got the crows. Law. The laws are changing. Magic. Are you recognizing the magic? The more open we are to all of that, the easier it will be to just say, I'm just going to be open. I'm going to let go of that need to hang on and not judge myself for not being able to see things in the same way I was able to see things before, because we're not the same people we were a month ago. And it's okay. Sometimes we might need to take a break and regroup from our healing modality so that we can feel comfortable in what it is that we're doing and trust. And that's part of it too. This also has to do with, again, all things. Pay attention to the messages that we're receiving. How are we receiving messages? That may have shifted as well. For me, I was doing a lot of writing 3 months ago. For me, that has shifted to vocal, and then it goes back and forth and it morphs. So sometimes I'll sit down and force myself to write, and I realize in the back of my mind, I'm really just wanting to sing. But if I hadn't acknowledged that, because I was so tunnel visioned, going back to what I was saying earlier, I would have missed that realization, oh, I've got some new sounds that want to come through. So it's okay to not put the pen to paper. But I'm being guided to share, that's because I've done the work and I can recognize it and acknowledge it. If we aren't doing any of that, we're not writing, we're not meditating, we're not listening to our inner voice, sometimes we do need to force ourselves, so to speak, to sit down and focus with intention. And just by us forcing ourselves to write a few things on the paper, we then acknowledge, oh, I don't want to write right now. What do I want to do? What activity will bring me joy right now? And it might just be going for a walk. And then as I walk, perhaps I see things like a flower or a mushroom or a crow that shows up that says, here's a gift. Pay attention to Mother Nature right now. I know that seems simple. Everybody's in a different stage. If you're really not sure, reach out to a light worker who can assist you with that. I set up a session just to have fun with the gene keys and astrology with my friend Carrie Ann this week at Quirky Cosmo, just because I thought it would be fun, right? I'm probably going to reach out to another friend of mine who's amazing, Liz Franco, who actually is like super organized and super, all kinds of things. I reached out to my friend Candace, right? Love Essence. Or did you change your Instagram account again? To talk about where we both seem to be centering in. I saw this. Oh, I saw this too. Oh, now I understand what that meant. And we help each other. We ping off of each other. That's how this works. My friend Kat, my friend Sid, my friend Alyssa, my sister. I have all of these beings that I have the ability. Sometimes I'll look at my friend Saskia's artwork and I'm like, oh, I've been seeing the egg. What did that represent to you? That can assist us in our guidance, right? We might listen to some light language And I could list like 10 people that I've listened to who have this beautiful tones that I go, wow, okay, that is similar to what I was saying this week. I wonder what that meant. And if none of that is inspiring to you, that's when we really have that disconnect. And that's a sign that we need to go deeper, because we've been ignoring a deeper part of ourselves through distraction. And that's a sign that it really means we need to focus and start honing in on what will bring us joy, because that is the most important, I'm going to end on this note, experience we can ever have, especially now. And that means work. This isn't just necessarily going to come easy. Most of my friends that I connect with, it doesn't come easy. It hasn't come easy for them. We've had challenging lives. And we've had challenging lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. But from my perspective now, it isn't about those other lifetimes necessarily. It's about our lifetime now. Have we processed our childhood, our birth trauma, our relationship trauma? Let's stop blaming things on past lives. Not that we are, but some people are really caught up in that, because oftentimes what we have experienced in our past life that we didn't work out has shown up for us in this lifetime as a trauma. That is our clue. If we're wondering, if you're afraid of water, it probably is showing up for you in this lifetime. So rather than having to understand that we might have drowned in a past life, which can be helpful through QHT sessions and Akashic record readings and things like that, all I'm saying is that can also be tunnel vision. So acknowledge, I really have a fear of water. I'd like to work through that. Maybe I'll book a QHT session or have an Akashic record reading. Maybe it really wasn't. Maybe it happened when you were 2 and you forgot about it. Sometimes by going into meditation and asking for those memories to be brought to the surface, that can assist. Or asking to integrate those feelings of fear, for example, intending with intention and focus, can help us access and clear and integrate it right then. So there's a lot of techniques and tools that we all can help each other with. That's what I do, right? I work through these things and then I share it with you guys. And then if people feel inspired to reach out and do healing work with me, they do. Or I recommend other people for them to connect to. You might need to do more yoga or therapy sessions. I have Jess, YoThera, that I've connected with, who reached out to me through doing a session. And then I was like, oh, this is awesome. I love what you're doing. That's what this is all about, guys. And last but not least, being okay where you're at and really loving yourself. Again, this isn't always sunshine and rainbows.